Hello again and welcome back. Thanks for watching. This week, I'm going to get into some bankruptcy, insolvency, power of sale info, whatever you want to call it. They're on the rise. So I'm going to go through some information. First, starting with some news headlines here from the Globe and Mail. Just this week on August 11th, real estate insolvencies in Canada set to surpass levels of global financial crisis. Sounds like a pretty serious headline. All the links for these articles are in the description. This one has a paywall, and of course, I didn't pay. From Better Dwelling, Canada is seeing 359 consumers file for insolvency per day before recession. They even threw in a little recession prediction at the end of that headline. From the Daily Hive, and again, this is from this week, just from yesterday, Canadian consumer insolvencies saw one of their worst months ever. And the problem isn't just in Canada. This is a global phenomenon, just like many other things. Here's one from the Netherlands. More bankruptcies in July. This is from yesterday, August 12th. Statistics Netherlands reports that adjusted for the number of court session days, there were 24 more bankruptcies in July 2024 than in June. That was an increase of 6% in the first 7 months. Approximately 43% more businesses were declared bankrupt than 1 year previously. The number of bankruptcies was also higher than in the last 3 years before the coronavirus pandemic. And of course, they have the chart here, and you can see it is at the same levels of as they were in 2020 when the pandemic first started, and it is higher than before the pandemic also. France records strongest rise of real estate insolvencies. Insolvencies are also on the rise in Germany and in the UK. And to further expand on that, this one's from July 24th this year. German real estate insolvencies rise by 244% in first half. I have a number a little bit larger than that from Canada near the end of this video also. Japan's century-old companies suffer 95% surge in bankruptcies. Inflation and succession problems deal blow to long-time businesses. Bankruptcies among Japanese businesses that are over 100 years old jumped 95% on the year to a record high in January to June, according to a report Friday by the Tokoku Data Bank. This article is from last month, July 20th. A total of 74 were in court-led bankruptcy during the period, the largest number for the first half in data going back to 2000. The full year tally could top the 120 seen in 2008 during the global financial crisis. And these articles were just from a simple search for bankruptcies and insolvencies. And of course, we're seeing this throughout the world. And these are all recent articles too. If I go back further, there's, of course, more from the winter and whatnot, but these are just the most recent ones. Now moving on to some Canadian data. So this first chart is the mortgage arrears as a percent of the total mortgages in Canada. And this is one of the regular statistics that I track. I've talked about it from time to time. It's probably been a month to two since I've talked specifically about this chart, but here they are. They're just under 0.2%, still historically very low, but of course they have climbed from the all-time lows, which were recorded last year. This is the same data, but it's the total number of mortgages as opposed to a percent. And again, this is in Canada, and this is just major banks. I've talked about this. This is only 11 of the major banks. And this time around, we're seeing more of these private lenders and mortgage investment corporations and whatnot. We're seeing them in higher numbers, much higher numbers than we did in the last time we had one of these cycles. Now, I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a second also. And just like the percent, you can see it is rising. It dipped back down actually in April, and then May is the latest data, a little tick back up. And these are the highest numbers of these numbers of mortgage delinquencies or arrears in 37 months since mid 2021. Now, I wanted to compare this with the Bank of Canada overnight rate, of course, interest rates and the correlation to mortgage arrears. And again, I've talked about this many times, but this is the most recent updated data since we've had two interest rate cuts. And just looking at this chart, you can see the red is the mortgage arrears and the gray is the overnight rate, the Bank of Canada rate. And you can see it's like an inverse correlations there. Interest rates rise and the mortgage arrears fall. And the opposite's also true. When they start cutting rates, the mortgage arrears increase significantly, actually. Now, let me just put this into a little bit simpler to understand chart here. I've just added some lines in here. And those vertical dashed lines are every time They went through a rate cutting cycle, a major rate cutting cycle, more than 1 or 1.5%. I didn't include the small ones, but you probably could. Those lines are exactly 1 to 2 cuts into the cutting cycle. So you can see on the far right side, we are 2 cuts in, nothing's happened yet. But looking back prior to 2010, there, 2007, 2008 or so, when they started cutting, look at the mortgage arrears. They started taking off. Sometimes it takes a few months, but they do take off. Same within just after 2000, 2002 or so, when they started cutting, the mortgage arrears picked up. And then way back in 1995, 1996, they were going through a cutting cycle. And of course, mortgage arrears were picking up big time into 1997 or so. So again, this is part of the cycle. I talk about these. I'm just not just making numbers up and fake predictions. These are predictions based off of historical trends that are very accurate in their data. Now, this is the Canadian data. I've broken it down by province to see how each province is faring and to kind of do some comparisons and see if we can find some trends in that data too. So here it is by province, or should I say region. They've grouped Atlantic together. You have Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. At the bottom there, you see BC, Quebec, and Ontario. This is when they started to trend up. I've added the line in there, the vertical trend line. And the rest of them, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the Atlantic provinces, and especially Alberta. Alberta is still trending down as we're trending up. And of course, everyone in Alberta says, Alberta's a different story. We don't have to worry. We have whatever else going on there. They seem to think it's untouchable, but I want to show you why it's not untouchable. They're just lagging behind in the data. I've isolated just Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, and BC here because, again, these are the most populated provinces or areas, regions, whatever you want to call them in Canada. And going back to just after 2005 to 2006, you can see it's hard to see on this one, but Ontario and Quebec started to trend up. Alberta was still trending down. They were still trending down for 3 years or so after the Ontario and Quebec started to make their moves. Then the next one, just before 2010, this is just around when the mortgage arrears peaked for Quebec and Ontario. And look at, and they started trending down actually. And look at Alberta. Alberta arrears were trending up, and they had a big spike back then. They had a really tough time in 2012 and so with mortgage arrears. And actually, Alberta prices were flat for a long time after that. Well, they declined and they remained flat for a long time after that. But again, that was the opposite of what's happening right now. Then on to just after 2020 there, the last trend line on the right. Our mortgage arrears were trending down just after the pandemic when they started introducing all this stimulus and bailouts and whatnot. Of course, we went to an all-time low for Ontario, Quebec, and BC. And look at Alberta. Alberta didn't start to trend down until after us. They did a dip, but they went back up. And it took probably 6 to 8 months for them. So they're behind the trend. So anyone that thinks Alberta is safe and they're doing better than anyone and they don't even know the reason why. Most people, they just make the obvious statement, which is true. It's because they're lagging behind us 6 to 8 months. And you're going to see that data start to fill in very shortly. Now, I did receive actually a couple of messages. One was just last night, and I'm not going to say your name, but alerting me to the number of rentals available, especially in Calgary right now. Another one messaged me on X maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I appreciate that also. And looking at this site here, Rent Faster, now they have told me that the number of rentals is picking up significantly, like every month and every week, every day, they say. But 2 months ago, or even not even 2 months ago, it was like 4,000 and something rentals. Now there's 6,611. I just did this before making this video. So the rental market in Calgary is getting flooded with rental listings, from what I understand. And actually, just look below this on the side, the thumbnail of one of those apartments there. It says move-in ready, all utilities plus internet included. Now they're offering big incentives in Calgary right now for a lot of these condo units, especially when you're moving in, whether it's a free month's rent or all sorts of bonuses from moving into these units. Another thing that they alerted me to was the amount of units, or the number of units, again, using the same data, the same search area here, that are ready for immediate occupancy. And it's over 50%, 60% in some regions, meaning that there's a lot of vacant units sitting there doing nothing because investors have bought these units. Now, a lot of these investors are from out of province, and a lot of them are obviously local, but there's tons from BC and Ontario that have bought up these units, and they're not going to be able to rent them for what they were promised. They were promised one thing, and they're not getting a lot of price reductions from what I hear going on right now. If you know, let me know in the comments what you're seeing in the rental market in Calgary. I'm not on the ground there. I'm just giving or providing the information I was told. But here you can see another move-in bonus on the thumbnail property that's on the right-hand side, limited time offer. And of course, everyone's offering bonuses on these vacant units to get people moved in. Now, as time goes on, these people are going to hurt more and more as they can't fill these units and going to have to drop prices. And what's going to happen? Obviously, bankruptcies, arrears, insolvencies, they're going to increase. And again, we're 6 to 8 months behind at the most in Calgary right now. And we've seen the uptick in Ontario, Quebec, and BC. And you're going to see it soon in Calgary too. And they're going to get hit pretty bad. If you go back and look at that chart here, look at the different areas here, regions. They're not all provinces. Again, some of them are grouped together. Quebec got hit pretty bad back in the 90s. Calgary got a big beating there in the 2000s or 2010, after 2010, 2012 or so. And of course, Saskatchewan's the highest for some reason. I don't know exactly why that is, what's going on with the economy there, but they've had a big spike prior to the pandemic or right when it started. And of course, now they're a lot higher than any other region in Canada. And lastly, here in Ontario, this is one of my regular charts. I've just updated it today with this week's data. This is for the ITSO, the 15 boards. It used to be 20 boards, but now it's 15 boards surrounding the GTA. So we've actually lost two of the boards to TREB or to the Toronto Real Estate Board, and our numbers are still higher than they were. So, and of course, the Toronto Real Estate Board's higher than they were. So looking at both of them, they're both at records numbers since I've been tracking them. The ITSO numbers I've been tracking since the beginning of 2023, and the TREB numbers I've been tracking since June last year. So they're both significantly higher. And I talked about that other statistic at the beginning of this video. These are both 262% and 263% higher than they were in August last year. So the same month last year was seeing significant increases. Of course, this is not unexpected if you follow my channel, but we are seeing the data. It continues to unfold, and it's obviously not going to slow down anytime soon. I'm expecting we're going to see a month or something, or maybe 2 months, where you will see this data slow down and it'll probably pick back up again. But I haven't seen anything significant yet. There has been a couple of times here. You look at the chart that it's dropped down and temporarily looks like they're in February and March, but picked right back up again. And that's probably because people were on vacation that were, listing these places for sale or whatever. Who knows? Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Are you seeing increased rentals where you live? Or are you seeing increased bankruptcies? Sometimes the realtors put a power of sale sticker or right on top of the sign. Anyway, let me know what you see and think, and I'll see you next week.